Hey, I've got a couple code machines that need to be calibrated and adjusted. This first one's a basket case. It will be repairable, but I've broken into it and I've got it in a disassembled state that you should never have to take it. Maybe we can touch on that later as we go. But I've got this second machine I'm going to try and get online today. I ordered this CMB-CK calibration kit from HPC because I was looking into shipping these back to get calibrated, and you're supposed to use their box to send it back. If you don't, use your own box, send it to them. They'll eventually get to it, give you an estimate, and they'll charge you for a box to return it and quote you for whatever your repairs are. And I went ahead and ordered the kit thinking, well, maybe I can get to the bottom of it. So that's where we're at here. I'm going to try and hook you up on a stand and we'll get it going. But the kit comes with a setup key and for spacings and depths. And it comes with a setup disc, which is like a cutter, but it has no teeth. And you just install it like you would a normal cutter, you know, with the large side facing outwards. Try and get us in a stand here. Got these wood clamps holding this up here. All right, so the first thing they have us do is, get the setup disc on a machine, and they want us to check our range and our depths. So you're supposed to dial your space, and make sure you get to these circles, left, and right. All the calibrations take place kind of at top dead center of the machine. And you do the same with your depths. Now, my depths are starting at that circle and running up to this first inner circle here. The instructions say make sure it dials to the circle, but they don't mention there's two circles for each space. And what's the deal with that? But either way, we're going to go on with trying to calibrate the machine. All of the adjustments get made kind of in the vice jaw assembly here with set screws that are kind of pinning the main shaft and the depth shaft and the shoulder stop shaft in place. And that was part of the problem with the first machine, is 5 out of 7 of the set screws were stripped and wouldn't even begin to loosen, and it was going to turn into an intense extraction. I did remove the entire shaft from the machine, which caused the needle assembly to come uncalibrated, and that needs to be reinstalled with care. That's like I say, a whole another can of worms there, but I do feel I can get it back together. What my base problem with that machine was, there's set screws on these gears that interface the needles, and mine is loose. So if I hold this gear still, this needle has travel left and right where it's slipping on its small Allen set screw. So I've ordered super tiny Allen wrenches, and when they come, I'll get that machine back together and going again. On the first machine, it's a big deal. This machine hopefully will calibrate. So we installed the setup key. Well, before you do that, you're supposed to loosen the vice jaw just slightly and make sure that when you push this in and the jaw bottoms out on the guide disc, that this is at least going to the circle here, which mine is actually not, but I think that's partly because my depth adjustment has a problem. But they do have you check that first. Either way, so we put the setup key in and tip stop it. Like so. And then you dial this to the space mark. And when you hand bring this in, the cutter should drop in that slot, which this one is not. You can see how far out I am on space. So that adjustment's going on with 4 set screws on the lower rod. I'm going to ditch some of the stuff on the table. So before I did this video, I made sure the set screws would move, because the last machine they were all locked up. And that's what made me start thinking, if all 4 set screws are tight and super tight and stripped and unable to be loosened, it probably never moved. So the problem was probably in the needle. And I actually started this machine by making sure that needle set screw wasn't loose. So I've pre-removed the 4 screws that hold this cover on. But if I push left and right on this needle, it should be, you know, rigid where that set screw is holding it on its shaft. So this looks good. Put 1 screw in here in case I flip the machine. So for the depth adjustments, I'm sorry, we're on spacing right now. There's 2 set screws right in here that are on that shaft, and 2 from the very bottom, accessible through these holes. So I'm going to loosen these up just a little, all 4 of these, so that we can make our adjustment. And we may have to go into 2 videos. I might split this up because we can only get 10 minutes on Instagram. So I've got all 4 of those set screws loose. The other thing I actually want to do on this, because my life experience is when you dent the set screw into something, that tends to seek out that dent again. So we're just going to shift this on the shaft to get our spacing right. And so I don't hit those original dents, I'm actually going to try to rotate this shaft. And get away from those original marks. Might need a pair of pliers to do that, but make sure we're loose. And what I'm trying to do is grip that shaft over here on this far side. Let's see if I can bring it this way. It brings more of the shaft out here. So I'm going to get a hold of this, try and give it a spin, and maybe if you watch this shaft, we can see if it moves. That's moving a little. I'm going to grab some pliers real quick. Be right back. This rotating the shaft business is not in the instructions. It's just something I feel like that I want to do so that I don't seek out and get those dents with my set screws. So now I got some channel locks on here. I'm going to try and spin this shaft. Let's see if we can see that happen. Try and get you somewhere. All right, maybe we can see right in there. I'm going to give a spin right now. And there it went. So I got about a 1/4 turn on that shaft. I'm going to stop there so I don't jigger it up too bad. And get back to this calibration. Bringing the shaft back to the space mark. Top dead center. And at that point, this, with the set screws loose, should move on that shaft. Left, right, whichever way we need to go. So what I'm going to try and do is move this out till it'll drop in its depth slot in that key. We might need a little hammer or something. It's definitely way out. Just redouble checking those set screws underneath. I'm going to try and take a screwdriver, get this to move a little bit. I'm sure it's been on that shaft for a while. I'm going to grab a pry tool, try and get down in here. Should have brought the tool bag. Alright, got the whole tool bag closed. I'm going to try and get this pry tool in here and get this to open up. Just doesn't want to move. I'm actually going to go in here, get on the end of this shaft, try and get this to budge. There, it moved. So I got on the end tip of that shaft, right there, and got some movement. Let's see where we're at. Still needs to go more that way. Could probably do that from above. Close. I'm just going down in here onto the tip of that shaft. Here's a flashlight right down there on the tip of that shaft. A little bit more. I'm giving this a twist to cause it to move. I've gone too far. Just tapping it back. We just want this to drop in that slot. A little more. Fairly crude setup, just like all key machines. Trying to see what side it's sitting on. It's now to the right of the slot. This just needs to go back in. There we go. And obviously that should be perfect. So making sure I'm on my space mark here, dead center, small needle. And I'm going to use that space mark. I feel like I'm rubbing on that side of it. So if I shift over here on the space mark a little bit to the right, it still drops. A little bit to the left, it does not drop. I think I want to go a little bit in the original direction. Probably should have lubricated that shaft on it. Alright, that's made it worse. So I'm going back with the micro tap again. Just trying to tell which side I'm dragging on down here. I think of anything, it needs to go back in. I just feel it dragging a little bit. Alright, well for now I'm going to call that it. Feels like it's dragging on one of the sides. At the same time, it's a pretty tight notch. I mean, maybe it's perfect. So we're going to get a set screw in there on the Allen wrench. If I can find my small wrench. And that's what the instructions are telling you, is to at least tighten one before you do anything else. Let's just flip it and hit one of the bottom ones. Make our first new dent. Alright, I'm sure we're going to have to split this video up. But that's our spacing, which was way out. So I've got two tight set screws. Should be able to proceed with depths. And I'll go back, make sure I like what I did. Tighten the other two set screws. So I'm on the space mark, dropping in the slot of the key. Now I'm bombed down that slot. This depth mark over here. Depth mark over here. When I plunger this in by hand, it should be top dead center. And it's not. While the phone's out, I'll show you what I've been doing here. course the vice jaw ends up there, or the wing nut. But I've been trying to get that dead centered, and can't tell if I'm dragging one side or the other. Looks pretty good. All right, now we need to do our depth. And I like that. I don't like that that's sticking. Lube that up. But the fact that this is shy of that mark is good. When I correct this to there, that's probably going to take us back to where in the beginning I wasn't quite going to these circles. And when I advance this needle to get the depths right, it's probably going to take care of that depth range. Which is why I don't know it should be one of the initial steps they got you doing. Zoom back out. Alright, so for the depth, this kind of plunger rod that hits on, you know, this depth plunger has 2 set screws of its own. And like I say, on the last machine, one of the 2 was stripped out. I did manage to get it out after disassembly of the unit using an extractor and a straight screwdriver to extract broken pieces that happened and whatnot like that. But here we go. So this is loose, and then this basically is kind of out of round. So it has a place on the end to grip it with a wrench, and as I adjust that, you know, it'll change this depth reading. So let's go in here and look. I'm bottomed in my setup key. This depth mark over here should be dead center, and it's not. So as I turn this, I can do it by hand. See, that's making it worse. I'll go ahead and put a wrench on it. This makes it better. Too much better. Oops, I've dialed it the wrong way. I think the instructions ask you to check this 3 times. I think it's a teensy bit more clockwise. That's too much. Teensy bit counterclockwise. It's darn close. I'm going to go just a teensy bit more. That's dead on. So at that point, I'm going to try and just hold this from rotating. Back this out. And tighten this down. And I'm going to do them both. But one thing you don't want to do is strip them out. I can tell you when they're stripped, you can't get them out of there. So that's tight. In fact, for the other machine, I bought longer set screws and just figured I'll let them protrude a little bit. They don't really get in the way. And I've always got hopes of getting them out better. Whether I slot them with a Dremel tool and use a straight screwdriver, or who knows what. So now we're going to double check this again. Put our spaces on the space mark. Drop it in the slot. Depth mark, pretty much top dead center. So this machine should be accurate. Now the only other thing you can calibrate is the actual shoulder stop itself. And if this shoulder isn't perfect on the shoulder of the setup key, there's a single set screw down here, and you can just turn this shoulder rod clockwise or counterclockwise. It's threaded on the end, and that'll actually track and move that shoulder stop here left and right. So looks like we're good on that, but you see the threads down in here. And this one, it's not slotted on the end. There's no thing. You're just supposed to grab it with your fingers and give it a spin. So calling that one done. I think it never really slipped adjustment, so I'll tighten that up. Make sure it's locked down. And this code machine's calibrated. Rock on, people. Lock Rocker 365 on Instagram.